Hi, I'm Mercedes Faub at the Captured on Canvas studio. Welcome to Picture This. For today's painting, picture this. We're going to have a nice colorful sunset shining over the ocean, soft crashing waves over the beach, and an ice-cold margarita sitting there waiting for us. Before we get started, we want to make sure we have everything sitting in front of us. Most importantly, on my easel, I have a blank 16 by 20 canvas, horizontal. Next, on my paint palette, I am going to have all of these following colors. I'm going to have a lot of white, the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, some black, and metallic gold. And also a little bit of glitter that I'm going to save for later. For my paint brushes, I'm just going to use these basic 3 brushes, my largest flat tip, my middle size, and my tiniest. We're also going to have I'm going to just call it a bad hair day, just an old wore out brush that's a little frayed on the end. And don't forget a cup of water as well as a sponge or a paper towel for cleaning those brushes. I'm going to go ahead and get started. With any painting, I always start with the background and paint the closest thing last. So I am going to start with my largest brush because we have a large background to color in. With a sunset, I want a lot of colors in it. I want it to fade from blues, teals, corals, and down to yellow. So it is going to be nice to prepare all of those colors first on the paint palette. With the top color, I am going to do just the primary blue. But the next color I want to do is a little bit of teal. So I'm going to start with a big scoop of white, plop that on my palette. I want it to be at least the size of a quarter. And when in doubt, mix more than you think you're going to need. I'm going to add a little bit of blue and get kind of a nice light sky blue color. And to make it teal, it's like a little secret ingredient. We just want the tiniest drop of yellow. Tiny drop. If you add too much, it'll turn green, so just a little bit. So there is a nice light teal. I'm going to wipe off that paint on the edge of my palette and clean off my brush. For my next color, I want to do kind of a coral pink, maybe even orangey. With the biggest brush, again, I'm going to start with white because I want these to be really light, almost pastel-y colors. Start with a big old scoop of white. And I'm going to add a little bit of red. Make it a pink first. And just like the teal, my secret ingredient again is going to be a little bit of yellow. Basically, coral is just a orange on the pink side. So a little bit more. Okay, so I kind of like that color. I think I'm going a little lighter today, but that's all right. I'm going to go ahead, wipe off my brush, and clean it one more time before our last color of our sky. For my next color, I am going to do a light yellow. So I'm going to take a big old scoop of white again, plop that somewhere else on your palette, and add a little bit of yellow until you get a shade that you like. This one's really fun to just experiment with different colors. That looks good. So while I got the yellow on my brush, I may as well start with the yellow. The yellow is going to be right at the bottom of my sky where it meets the horizon. So we're going to draw that horizon line here. I want my horizon to be maybe about halfway up on my canvas so that I have enough room for my beach and everything later. So I'm just going to draw a straightish line. It doesn't even have to be perfect right now. All the way across. Then I'm going to start coloring it in. Nice long brush strokes all the way across. Okay, so we want to go into our next color right away. We want this paint to be wet. I'm not going to clean my brush. I'm just going to dip into my coral and start right above the yellow and go all the way across first. And now I'm going to take that brush, I'm going to overlap it with that yellow going back and forth until we get a nice blend between the two colors. Okay, so now that I got the coral done, however I'd like it, I'm gonna go ahead and clean my brush because I want a fresh start. And now I'm gonna dip right into my next color while that coral is still wet. So with the teal, I am going to start again right above that color, that pink coral, and then also remembering the sides. Okay, now I don't need to clean my brush. I'm going to dip right into the primary blue and repeat those same steps. Okay, we're going to go ahead and keep that brush and we're going to go on to our next part of the background. It's going to be a lot of blending like we just did. Since we have the primary blue, I'm going to start with that right in the center of where I want my water. And I'm just going to fill in about a couple inches up and leaving about maybe 1 to 2 inches from the horizon, and then leaving maybe 3 to 4 inches up from the bottom, because we are going to add a little bit more color, and we also don't want to forget to add in that little bit of beach on the bottom, a little bit of sand. Okay, so while this paint is wet, now I'm going to go into blending my next color. I am going to go back to the teal. I'm not going to clean my brush. I'm just going to let some cool colors pop through. So with that teal, I'm going to start again underneath my blue, all the way across, and then blend. Okay, so then I'm going to take this and you can decide how wavy you want your water to crash onto the shore. So you may make a little wave here, kind of bring it up, or whatever floats your boat. And then we're going to go ahead and clean off our brush. We're going to try to do it quick here. While that primary blue is still wet, I'm going to go ahead and to the black. It's a little scary, all this is really dark color now, but we got this. Starting right above the blue, all the way across. So that will finish most of our background. We still have the sand to do, but we're going to make sure to let that dry so it doesn't blend into our water. In the meantime, we'll take a little break. Welcome back to Picture This. I had just finished my sunset sky with the start of my ocean water. We're going to go ahead and start doing a little bit with more detail and get our sand onto the canvas. So with my largest brush, I am going to dip into my metallic gold. I love this color because it's already a sand color already. And maybe with that sunset, it'll make it glisten a little. So with the gold, I'm just gonna go right underneath my ocean, all the way across, nice long brush strokes. I always find that these colors are a little bit more see-through. So it does help to make sure they're long brush strokes all the way across. So then you don't see those stop and start points with the brush. We're going to take that all the way down to the bottom. So sometimes I pick up my canvas and put it on that edge there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush. And for my next step, I am going to add in my sun. This is where you can get a little creative. You can put that sun wherever you'd like, but things are more appealing to the eye if it's in the rules of thirds. So about a third from the right is where I'm going to place my sun. I'm going to be using my middle-sized brush and just white. I'm going to make just a nice big arch using the thin side of my brush. So maybe right around here. So I'll start a little bit to the right. arching it over. You can make the sun as big or as little as you'd like. And then I'm going to do just a little bit with my wide side of the brush now, going all the way through the arch, bringing it in a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to color it all in white. I'm just going to fade it into the yellow of my background so that it's a little bit more subtle. Okay, and that's all it needs to be right there. Next, I'm going to set this small brush down, and I'm also going to do a little bit of work with the sky with the white. I'm going to do what's called dry brushing. It's basically using a brush that is dry, very, very, very little paint. Just kind of leaves a little bit more texture behind versus being so solid. We're going to use that large brush for this. I'm going to take some white, dip it, and I'm going to wipe it until I have hardly anything left. And really light pressure, I'm just going to softly brush just in some random spots throughout my sky, make it look like maybe some clouds or a nice haze. All right, while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and add some in through the reflections of the water. This will be the beginning of it. So again, with a little bit of white, I'm going to focus just centered underneath my sun, flicking that brush to the left and to the right. Just really light pressure. There we go. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush. And I'm going to do a little bit more with the color in the reflection, since especially I have those sky colors still on my palette. They didn't dry up yet. You can just choose whichever one you want. With that middle size brush, I'm going to start maybe with the teal. I'm going to hold that brush horizontally. So when I go left and right, it makes a nice thin line. And I'm just going to dabble that in wherever. Again, just really soft. Flick that brush back and forth. Okay, so that is going to be the reflection. I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush. We're going to go ahead and jump into that margarita. So you can decide if you like strawberry or lime. I'm going to do this strawberry because I feel like it'll complement the pinks in my sky a lot. So I'm going to use my middle-sized brush, and because it's strawberry, it's just red. So I'm going to just start with red. Now this I would say is the toughest part because it involves a little bit of drawing, but we got this. We're going to start with the color of choice here. I'm going to do red, and I'm going to start with the rim of the glass because it's just a straight edge. I do want it to be a little bit higher than my horizon to give it a little bit of variation in height here. So I'm going to start over here about a third from the left. I'm going to start with just one little dot. This is going to be where I want the center of my glass. And I'm going to draw this straight line going to the left and to the right. And if it's not perfect, no worries. We'll be adding sugar or salt to the rim later. That'll kind of cover it up. And then for the next part, I'm going to start making the walls. So I'm just going to come down a little bit on the left and the right. And let's just finish the top of my margarita glass here. So it's just a scoop and pull it straight over to the other side and scoop up to the other side. So it's like a floating boat. We're going to go ahead and make the second part of the glass, which is smaller. If it helps, you can always start with a center dot. That always helps things keep centered. And just maybe about halfway to the edge, I'm just going to scoop down, leaning it in. I'll do the same thing for the other side. And then I'm going to smile it down to connect to the other side. Now I'm just going to go ahead and color it all in. I might round these corners next, just these little corners right here, just so the glass has a better little flow. And while this is wet, I'm going to give it a little bit of shading. So without cleaning my brush, I'm just going to take a tiny bit of black, hold that brush vertically so it's standing up. I'm going to start from the opposite side of my sun, because this will be the shaded side, and I'm just going to do soft little flicks pulling in towards the center, and I'm going to follow this down along the whole left side here. Okay, so we're gonna let that dry here before we do our little details. So we'll see you after the break. Welcome back to Picture This. We are getting close to finishing our Margarita Beach. For the next step, we're gonna do all of the little details. So before we start drawing in the glass, I figured let's add the little lime. So with my middle-sized brush, we are gonna make lime green. So to make lime green, we are gonna start with yellow. So I'm going to take a big old scoop of yellow and separate that. And to make it lime green, we're just going to use a tiny bit of blue. Not too much because it can get really dark really quick. Mix that in. And ta-da, we got some lime green. One thing I always like to do though is still add a little bit of white. It makes it a little less transparent. So once you got a good color you like, we're gonna go ahead and start. I'm just gonna make the full round slice for the lime, and I'm gonna kind of put it over here on this corner of my glass. So I do wanna start over top of my glass, maybe about an inch in, and I'm just gonna make this big circle. And I want that circle to run into the outer edge of my glass. Make sure it's sitting on the lip there. And with this, we are gonna go ahead and keep it a little bit on the see-through side anyways. But we're gonna make the little slices within, kind of like a little pizza. So you wanna make a dot where the center of your circle would be, and then I'm gonna draw those straight lines going out. And then just kind of go to the glass wherever that line wants to go, and just continue around. And for the next step, I'm just gonna do really light, maybe with the thin side of my brush, wide side, just add those little lines throughout. Leave your paint thicker in some spots, some in lighter. Usually they're a little see-through, especially with the sun shining behind it. And I might even add just a little bit more blue to my lime green, making it more of an apple green, just to add a little bit of variation. So like just on the inside, I might just darken it. And that'll finish our lime. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean off my brush. All right, so now that our brush is clean, we're gonna go ahead and do the outlining for our glass. It's gonna be with white, and we're gonna just start with easing into the outlining before the stem. So with the middle-sized brush, it's nice and fresh, so I like how it holds a little bit more paint. It's nice and thin. If that brush doesn't work for you though, a tiny brush always works really good too. So with the white on this brush, and really light pressure, remembering to breathe, and also working a little bit quicker too also helps with outlining. If you go too slow, you have like more time to wiggle. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start outlining. And we also will add a little bit with reflection. So we're just gonna continue this line back like how we did originally when we drew it out. We can even kind of flick it in too, so it's not a solid line. Then while we are at it, we may as well add the highlights. So with the wide side of the brush, I'm gonna start towards the top of the glass on the right side and flick down. Really light, quick movement. Kind of pull it away from the canvas as you pull it down. We'll do one more down on the bottom portion, just like that. Okay, so now we're gonna start the stem of our glass. This is gonna be two thin lines from the center going straight down, and we wanna make sure that it's on the beach. I don't think they float, so that would be kind of silly. So make sure it comes down to the sand. So from the center, just maybe a smidge to the left, I'm gonna draw a straight line down, and one more right next to it, just a little bit over. You can make it honestly as big or as small of a stem as you want. Maybe just round these little corners here. You can always shape your glass a little bit. You can always add a little line in the middle too if you got room to add a little bit of a reflection. Then I'm going to do the base of the glass. Now because we're kind of looking at it, it's actually going to be more of an oval with the perspective. So I'm going to start up on the stem a little bit, and I'm going to turn that brush around, making a nice wide oval, starting from the other side and curving it through. And then I'll just kind of flare it out at the bottom, add a little bit of reflection, still keeping it in that oval pattern. And you know what? I'm also just going to add a little bit of highlight to my lime as well. Maybe right next to each center line there of the pizza slices and around the outer side. So now that we added the white glares, now we're going to get a little crazy and add a little bit of the color from our sky into the reflection of the glass. So with yellow next, I will just add a couple little lines throughout the base, maybe throughout the stem, and a little bit in the top part of the glass as well. Feeling pretty good. One thing I'm gonna do though with my background, I realize with my water, if you feel like it looks a little flat, you can always do a little bit of dry brushing on the other area. So I'm just gonna go back to my big brush with a little bit of white. And I just realized I kinda didn't do any dry brushing over here to add a little bit of texture. And maybe just a little bit from the edge, but don't do too much because you don't want it to take away from the reflection from the sun. That's supposed to be the brighter area there. So just very subtle. And make sure you're happy with it at this point because we're about ready to do the last step, which is actually my favorite step. And that is going to be adding the crashing waves as well as a little bit of sugar or salt on the rim. So I'm going to clean that brush and I am going to jump into my Bad Hair Day brush. So just any rough bristle brush that's a little bit more frayed will work perfect. So what I'm going to do to start this step is a lot of dabbling. With my glitter that I have, it's only going to stick where the paint is wet, so you want to make sure to jump right into the glitter right away. So I'm just going to start though doing all of the dabbling with the white on this brush, and it's good to get plenty of paint on this brush as well. I do like to hold my canvas as well to make sure it's not going to bounce back at me. But I'm just going to dabble along that shoreline, overlapping the sand and overlapping that water. We want to hide that line. We can also add some more waves coming further out, making them a little bit thinner, just kind of maybe a little bit here and there. We don't want to go too crazy. You can always kind of pull it back and forth too if you want to soften that upper edge of it. And we're going to continue to add this as well to the rim of our glass. Okay, so while that paint is wet, we're gonna jump right into getting that glitter on there. For me, I just have a nice clear, I call it chunky glitter. They do have fine glitter too, but I like this stuff because it shows a little bit better. When I add the glitter, I do want my canvas to be flat. So I will just pick it up and just take a little bit in my hands and sprinkle it on. Sometimes I'll take the container and just kind of shake it like that too. Then I always kind of tap it, make sure it gets to all of the paint. And then usually you want to dump it on the trash, but you know, I guess I have brooms here, so we'll do that. Alrighty, so that is the final step of the painting, but there's always one more thing an artist always does with their work when they're done, is to make sure they sign it. You always want to know who does the masterpiece, and it's always fun to date it as well. I usually sign down in the lower corner, and it always takes me a while because I have this long name, and I decided a long time ago that I was going to sign my whole name. I can't change it now, you know. And the year. And there you have it. Thank you for following along with me, Mercedes, at the Capture on Canvas studio. We'll see you next time on Picture This.
Give it a minute.